From the land of the Mitten, it's the Philosophy Jerks.
Welcome, ghouls and ghosts, to the Philosophy Jerks, episode number 28. I am Brian, joined as always by...
Why is it that you're the one that always brings the decorations into the office?
Well, you gotta get in the spirit of the holiday season, Josh.
I suppose so. Well, in that case, I'm Josh the Ghoul. Josh.
Okay, I'll be Brian the Ghost.
Brian.
And together, we are the cure for the common conversation. Josh, is this your favorite holiday season?
Absolutely, Brian. I love the weather. I love the fact that everyone's dressed up as predominantly dead people, and everyone goes around begging people for food.
Yeah, or you get slutty costumes, too. That seems to be the new thing in the last 10, 15 years.
Did you see the slutty Gandalf costume?
No.
It's seriously, it's just a dude Gandalf outfit with the legs cut open so you can see the legs when the girl walks.
I've seen the slutty Darth Vader costume, which I found pretty interesting.
Yeah, wow. How would that be slutty?
It's just a Darth Vader dress, short dress.
Yeah, it's not. No, I don't even consider that a costume.
Whatever. So, Josh, before we get into this too much, you were kind of telling me before we started recording that there's a new venture you've gotten into.
Yes, Brian. Thank you for bringing it to our attention. Haha.
Hey, that's why I bring it up.
Ah, you're such a saint. Anywho, yeah, I've been recently, to get better at doing the podcasting thing, I've been studying sound waves. And during that adventure of studying sound waves, I decided to look into getting my ham radio license.
Meaning
I'm going to be one of those really fat guys that sits in the basement with a super big antenna in his backyard that wears sweatpants all day and talks to people in Brazil.
Okay, how is this different from pirate radio? Is this legal?
Yeah, it will be legal. You have to go get a technician's license, and then once you get that, you're allowed to broadcast on a certain bandwidth in the frequency spectrum. So
who cares about live streams? We're just going to do it ham radio style.
Well, to tell you the truth, Brian, what I was thinking about doing is you can shoot packets of data out into the ham radio waves. So I was thinking of compressing our show down to a really small file and shooting it out into the airwaves.
Perfect. The aliens will pick it up that way.
They'll know that we're not all dumb.
Exactly. All right, Josh. Enough screwing around for now. This is our special Halloween episode.
Yes, it is. I am very excited to say we have a very special guest for this Halloween episode.
He's been on the show before. He runs 80shorror.net.
Get it right, Brian. He will slit your throat.
He will. He's into the blood and guts. But we're bringing Derek back. We're going to do a little special Halloween Q&A episode here.
Indeed special, Brian, because not only did we ask our listeners to submit their questions on the Philosophy Jerks website, Derek also went back to the 80shorror.net crowd and asked them for their questions. And let me tell you, Brian, we have quite the eclectic mix of questions this episode.
We do. Some of them are Halloween related. Some of them are just not related to much of anything at all.
No, they're not. And of course, we have one from our superfan, James M. Powers.
Would it be a Q&A episode if we didn't have a question from James M. Powers?
No, I don't think we could do it right. Not without him.
It wouldn't feel right.
The show needs you, James.
Before that, Josh, there's one thing we have to do.
That's right, Brian. It's the beer review.
Beer, 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 I'm going for a beer. Beer, 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 I'm gonna drink some beer. I like drinking beer. Lovely, lovely beer. Beer, 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 I'm going for a beer.
Okay, Josh, Halloween themed. We expelled some brain energy thinking about what we were going to have for this beer review. What did we go with?
We went with Nosferatu. Ooh,
Nosferatu from Great Lakes Brewing Co. I'm not too happy that it came from Ohio, but maybe that fits a Halloween theme. It's scary. It comes from Ohio water.
Okay. That's a little below the belt, Brian, considering what Flint's going through right now.
It's not safe to drink the water in Flint, Michigan, a city of nearly 100,000.
Yeah, well, say what you will about Flint, but the water there never caught on fire.
No, but it is poisoning people.
It's not good enough to drink at all. Not really take a bath in, because my tub, it's just it's brown.
Okay. Yeah, well, all right. Well, okay. I don't have a defense for that. I wanted to, but I don't have anything.
You're a cruel, indifferent man.
I just like to hate Ohio. Sorry, Ohio, Josh. Anyways, yes, Nosferatu from Great Lakes Brewing. It's a cool painting of, well, Nosferatu right on the bottle.
Yeah, it's actually very reminiscent of the original silent film star. It has the long teeth and the pale white face. It's beautiful looking. I love it.
It is a cool picture. He's kind of got the elf ears almost, too.
Have you ever watched that old silent movie, Brian?
I've only seen clips. I've never actually sat down and watched the whole thing.
The whole thing, I mean, it's definitely from the silent film era and from a whole different generation of people, so it's hard to relate to on some level. But visually, for being a silent movie back when it came out, it's just incredible what they were able to do. It scared me. I saw it at a young age, and it scared me as a kid.
There's a certain level of creepiness to any silent film, in my opinion. I don't know, just the way, it's just from such a different time, the way the people look, the way the film moves, no one's talking.
Right, and you have to fill that in with your imagination.
Right, and if you're going to give scary images along with it, well, I'm already scared. Yes. So, I kind of was wishing this would be in a black bottle, but it's not.
Yeah, you can't have everything, right, Brian?
No, but the picture is cool, so I'll give it that. Here's the description. Don't be afraid of things that go hop in the night. Rich roasted malt flavors haunt the shadows of our imperial red ale's bitter teeth. Oh, yes. That's it. I mean, it's 8% alcohol, so that's a plus.
Oh, that's definitely a plus. I'm already feeling it, too.
Yeah, it's an imperial red ale. And looking at it here, it does appear very reddish.
Very much so, but, well, obviously I've already taken a swig, but let's take one for the audience before I describe the taste.
All right, here we go.
That is definitely a imperial red.
Yeah, it's really hoppy, though.
It is really hoppy. It has an IPA kind of bite to it. But it has, on the back of my tongue right now, it kind of feels like I'm drinking a porter or even a light stout.
Yeah, a little bit. I still got, I don't get that as much as you. I'm getting a lot of the hops bitterness, but it's not bad. It's not bad hops bitterness. I don't want to give that impression. Do certain tastes of anything, Josh, ever make you think of anything?
Are you talking about sensory recall?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah,
if you want to be a smarty pants about it.
Well, I'm just saying, I think everybody has that, Brian.
Okay. Okay, fair enough. Well, anyways, the taste of this makes me think of fall and dried leaves.
I can definitely sensory feel that through my deprivation of actual fall and leaves in my room.
I think that just is the alcohol talking.
It is. It's the 8% talking.
All right, so should we just give our thoughts on this?
I think so. Let's get right to the point because we do have that special guest, and we don't like to keep him waiting.
Well, it's Derek. We can keep him waiting a little longer.
Yeah, a little bit longer. Just long enough for us to take another swig, and let's give our thumbs up or thumbs down and final thoughts.
All right, here we go. Last swig before the final thoughts.
I will say, Brian, that this is the first Imperial Red I've ever had, so I wasn't sure what to expect taste-wise. And so I think that's what's going to be a large factor in me giving it a thumbs up. Because I don't really have anything to compare it to, so I can't tell you if it's the best Imperial Red. But being my first Imperial Red that I've ever drank, I will say that this is a good beer. I would buy this again.
Yeah, I can't recall if I've had other Imperial Reds or not, but based just on all the beers I've drank, and we've now had 28 different beers on the show.
Whew,
Not
this episode, right? Like the entire show?
Well, right. All of our episodes combined.
Yes,
we've now had 28 different beers. And based on that criteria, I will give this a thumbs up.
Very good.
It's more reminiscent of an IPA. If you like IPAs and you want one that's a little bit stronger, I would definitely suggest this.
Yeah, and I agree with you, Brian. It's definitely a fall beer.
Yes. Dried leaves and vampire teeth.
Oh, yes. Ooh.
All right, stick with us. Derek, your glorified host from 80shorror.net, will be joining us to answer your questions.
Beer, 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 I'm going for a beer. Beer, 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 I'm gonna drink some beer. I like drinking beer. Lovely, lovely beer.
Brian, I have a fever
A fever?
of 103, but the cure is at philosophyjerks.com.
All right, welcome back. Halloween. We've promised this for, well, since the last episode, haven't we, Josh?
Yeah, 2 whole weeks ago.
Yeah, well, it's every 2 weeks, but we were saying, hey, it's going to be a special Halloween one. We pulled out all the stops and we brought back a guest. Well, he's a returning guest.
That he is, and a very welcome returning guest, and a proper way to exit season 2 of the Philosophy Jerks.
Exactly. So even though it's kind of fun to keep him waiting, what do you say we bring him out?
All right, cue up the badass intro music. Here is Derek from 80shorror.net.
Thank you again for that lovely introduction, guys. Last time I was here, I was really blown away by your benevolence and everything. So to once again hear this coming from you is great, and it's great to be here. Thrilled to be here for a special Halloween episode and to talk about 80shorror.net as much as I possibly can.
Yeah, horror the shit out of your product, Derek. But you know what? Ever since your last episode that you came on and baffled us with your brilliance of 80s Horror Net, one thing that blew me away was your vocabulary.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not sure what to say to that. Thanks, I guess. I don't intentionally attempt to be pedantic. I know I'm using this word again, but I don't know. What can I say, you guys? I guess radio brings out the pretentious side of me.
All right. Well, Derek, thanks for fluffing us up a bit. So what we're going to do here is, for the past 2 weeks, we've been spamming everyone who listens to the show. We said, hey, we're going to do a special spooky Q&A. Send us any kind of question you want. We got a good response.
We sure did. We have a plethora of new questions in our email box.
We did. And since Derek fluffed us up pretty quickly here, I guess we can return the favor to him with this first question, which comes from Cameron Dennis. Are you familiar with Cameron Dennis, Derek?
No, I'm not. This is a new name to me. I'm sorry, Cameron, if you're listening, but I don't know you. Thank you for the question, though, yeah.
Well, it's not so much a question, but he says, 80shorror.net is an excellent website with great articles and an amazing place to find free-to-watch movies. Any thoughts to expanding to other decades besides the 80s?
Wow. Well, first I have to say, my ego is now being brushed to a great extent. First you guys, and now Cameron is, commending me for the site. So thank you.
Cock of the walk.
Exactly. I'm just waiting for that moment where I'm just completely crushed into the ground. But
well, we have to build you up before we break you down.
Good point. As for the question, though, I sometimes get this question, and I operate this website basically all by myself. I do all the content. I do everything on it. It's a lot of work. There's almost 1,000 pages, and I'm constantly updating it, doing my best to keep everything in order. And as of right now, I mean, it's just way too much work for me. If there comes a point where I find that the things that I'm getting back from the website, perhaps what that may mean, I'm not sure. But if I find that it's great enough to where I have the ability, the time, resources, then I might venture into the 90s, the 70s, something like that. But for the very near future, and maybe even distant future. I'm just going to be sticking with the 80s, but that may change.
I do have a request.
Well,
If you do go on and choose a decade, don't go backwards, go forward. I love horror movies in the 90s. They had the right amount of comedy to make them great.
Yeah, I completely agree. Early 90s is basically almost as good to me as the 80s. You get Tremors, you get Dead Alive, you get all these great movies. So that's probably what I would do if I did go that route.
well, wouldn't you have to change the name of the website at that point to 80s 90s horror net?
Well, this is, I guess, a bit of a reveal here. I mean, I kind of was planning on perhaps in the future, if I did have something like the 90s and the 70s, I was thinking, I actually bought the domain, midnightflix.com, and I was thinking about perhaps all melding this into one kind of big horror movie excellence sort of site. So we'll see if that happens.
You're like a god, man.
The horror fans unite.
Well, it's the perfect time of year, to get into your horror zone. So I do what I can.
Well,
Yeah,
Derek,
there's been nothing but horror movies playing at my house right now. I can tell you that much.
oh, same here. And what's beautiful about your website, Derek, is that it's all your movies are hosted on YouTube. So when I find a really good movie I love on your website during the month of Halloween, I just Chromecast it right up to my TV and bam, it's like Netflix going, and it's awesome. I love your website because it not only do you break them down by the 80s, but you have like this recent post where you're breaking down the best of the animals and creatures type of horror movies, and you have all this other cool articles on your website. So if you do venture into a new decade, I'm really excited for just the extra content, not just the new movies.
Yeah, exactly. And like you mentioned with the breakdown of the genres and so forth, I'm working on something right now that hopefully will blow everyone's mind. Again, it's coming soon. Just keep watching, keep going to the site, and you'll see what's in store.
All right. Okay, moving along here. This next one comes from Charles. He sent it through philosophyjerks.com/QA. I mean, come on, we got to pump ourselves up here. He asks, what are some of your favorite horror movies with philosophical undertones?
Oh man, that's a good question.
It is really
It's a good question and fitting for, this podcast.
Well, I don't know. Who wants to go first? Does anyone have anything in mind? Or, I mean, Josh, for some reason, I just imagine you having like a playlist for philosophical horror. I don't know why that is, but
Well, I mean, all in a way, all horror is philosophical to me, other than just like the straight up gore for gore's sake. And even that you can twist into philosophy. But I don't know, man. If I could nail it down, I just recently watched The Birds, and I kind of consider that horror. But there's a lot of philosophy going on in that movie, especially the ending. The ending is a really weird, like, nihilistic, this incredibly horrific event can happen to you, and it can be over in a heartbeat, and there's no rhyme or reason for it, and you can just kind of walk away from it. Kind of like being in a car accident, and there's like other people in the car with you, and everyone else is either horribly mangled or dead, and you just kind of undo your seatbelt, get out, and call the cops for help.
mm-hmm.
So it's kind of like that mentality that I really latch on to in that movie. Anything that does like the Invasion of the Body Snatchers style movie is really cool because it really speaks to like something along the lines of conformity as well as identity. You know, are you your body? And if you are, what part of your body are you? Because when those aliens suck into your brain and control you, you're not you anymore.
Yeah, it brings up a lot of interesting commentary about free will and this sort of thing as well.
Oh, definitely.
For me, I'm really a big fan of movies in general and horror movies too, which are very meta, if you will. Movies that basically make you question the reality that you're seeing, with a lot of ontological themes. So movies like Cabin in the Woods, for example.
Oh man, I love that movie.
Yeah, that was the big one that came to my mind when I heard the question. Movies like this, I just actually recently saw The Final Girls. It just came out. Also sort of dealt with similar themes. It was really cool. Scream, Wes Craven's New Nightmare, any movie that deals with these meta references, I really, really get into. So
Nice. I always liked. I had to watch it for a film class. The original The Thing.
Oh,
I liked a lot. how it was just it was more about the fear of the unknown. Everyone swears that they saw the thing in that movie, but they never really show it. Or, well, they do show it, but they don't. They always say, "Oh, I remember the guy hanging from the hook," but they never actually show that in the movie. So it's a lot to do with the fear of the unknown, the fear of something different. Probably that one for me.
Yo, Brian, there's a subgenre of horror movies called Lovecraftian or H.P. Lovecraft movies that play almost exclusively on the fear of the unknown and the fear of you being tiny and insignificant.
Yeah, and most of the movies that are based on Lovecraftian literature sort of have these sort of tendencies. From Beyond is one that I really like a whole lot as well. And I just list one more just off the top of my head. Woman in the Dunes from the early 60s.
Yeah.
It's a Japanese movie, like existentialist horror, if you might call it this. Really, really cool.
And most of all, don't forget Maximum Overdrive. That movie really hit home.
Absolutely. Well, I imagine you in that position one day, Josh.
What? I always think that Maximum Overdrive was the poor man's Terminator series. It's like,
right.
We can't build robots, but your lawnmowers are going to rise up and cut the shit out of you.
All right, let's move along. One more here to make you feel real good, Derek. This comes from Randy Escola was his email.
I'm just reminded of RC Cola for some reason. I don't know.
This is Randy Escola, extra caffeine.
You know what, Randy? That is a beautiful email alias. I love that. I don't care if that is your middle name.
All right. This question is for 80shorror.net. Sorry, philosophy jerks. I only just found your podcast.
Oh.
Well, at least you're listening now.
I suppose.
And you're welcome. A new fan answering your question. All right. He says, of the movies that came out in 2015 and the ones that are slated to come out in 2016, which horror movie has you the most excited to watch? And what are your thoughts on the future of horror as a genre?
Ooh. Well, let's see. I mentioned The Final Girls, which actually just came. I think it was actually came out video on demand, like maybe last week. It was probably the best horror movie that I saw this year. I forget if It Follows came out this year, but It Follows was also another really good one. I'm not really that up to date on what's coming out next year. I tend to revert backwards because of how I spend my time on my site. But The Final Girls was one that was really cool. If you're looking for a Halloween movie, I actually just saw Tales of Halloween last night. It was like an anthology movie with 10 shorts, and it was really cool too. In terms of the future of horror, it's probably too complex of a question to really get into. I think if I'm to just summarize it, I think that we're going to be seeing a lot more independent horror. The technology is coming to a point where everyone can make movies now. I think you're going to see a lot more of that, and less probably big budget movies, probably more sequels from the big budget movies, but more original stuff with independent filmmakers. So I think that's probably what I'm looking to see.
All right, nice. I personally can't really comment on this. I don't even know what's coming out. Future of horror. I mean, who knows? We kind of have gone through the whole gore. What is it? Torture porn, as they've called it.
Right, right.
I think that's probably just based on trends that'll probably slip back away for a while, and something else will come along. At least I think so.
Yeah, and you can only take that so far anyway. I mean, there comes a point where you just can't go any further unless you just start doing snuff movies. So.
Well, there's always the fake snuff movies,
which they've already done. So I mean, it's like
8mm.
How far can you take that?
Remember the movie 8mm with Nick Cage?
Yeah, it was Nicolas Cage.
Well, I do have a comment for the future of horror, and Derek, this kind of goes back to your comment on your love of meta ideas. And the point I wanted to make, or the thing I wanted to draw attention to, is I really see a future in horror in terms of like embodying the medium in which they're releasing their content on. So, for example, I foresee a lot of new horror movies, but they're maybe only be a few minutes long, that are on YouTube, and they're aware that they're a YouTube uploaded video. So, like, instead of going to a theater and sitting down chewing on popcorn and expecting a movie to make you forget that you're in a theater chewing on popcorn, I think that it's going to reverse the role, and it's going to I think the genre is going to realize that you're watching on YouTube or Netflix or something like that, and it's going to play into that kind of technology.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. And in fact, it's interesting that you say that, because actually I was just, before we got on here to record, I was just telling Brian that Unfriended was a kind of movie that seems to be moving in that direction. A lot of people didn't like that movie, but it seems like it might be sort of the initiator of the kind of trend that you're talking about. So it should be really neat to see that kind of develop.
I hope so, because there's nothing scarier than watching a piece of film. I hate to call a YouTube video a film, but it might be before too long. But nothing's better than watching a scary movie or a scary video, if you will, and completely forgetting that you're watching that and like tricking your brain into thinking it's real. I have a hard time with I hate to say it, with like movies from the 80s or even the 90s, because a lot of the concepts and whatnot don't allow me to forget that I'm watching a movie. So I always feel like I'm watching a movie about something scary, and I might jump here and there, but nothing truly gets under my skin when I watch older movies nowadays, which is really weird because it didn't used to be that way.
Well, isn't that kind of the appeal of the whole found footage genre?
Exactly, yeah.
You're supposed to, I mean, you kind of believe more that it's real, right? It seems like someone actually filmed it rather than, oh, I'm watching a movie. No further comments, Dave?
No further comments.
Let's just move on to the next one then. I wanted to get into this one before we have to take a break, so I think this is a perfect one to get into before we take a break. So this comes from Unknown, which makes it kind of scary, just blank. But they ask, do you guys have any comments or thoughts on the death of Elisa Lam?
Oh.
Now, we should probably set this up for people who don't know this story. So for those who do remember, Elisa Lam was, I think, 21. She was a college student kind of going on a road trip by herself along the coast of California. And so she started off in San Diego, and by the time she got to Los Angeles, she went to a hotel. Does anyone remember the name of the hotel?
I don't.
I think it's the Cecil. I think it's the Cecil Hotel.
I think actually, now that you say that, that sounds familiar. That might be it.
But anyways, the Cecil Hotel is kind of notorious, I guess, in Los Angeles for people who have committed suicide and been murdered there. So it kind of has a shady history to it. But essentially what happened was she went there, she went missing, and over the course of her missing and the police looking for her, they released a little bit of security footage. And the security footage was of her acting very strange and odd by the elevator of the hotel. She would kind of dart in and out of the elevator, act like she was talking to someone, but there was no one there. She would go back into the elevator. She would press all the buttons on the elevator, and then she started doing, what would you say, weird hand motions and body movements. And then she would kind of hide in the corner and then come back out and talk to the hallway. But that was the only footage they ever released of her. Anyways, so she went missing. Couldn't find her. And then about 2 weeks later, this is the kind of disgusting part, people who were staying in the hotel were talking about how the water from the hotel was discolored and tasted funny. Oh. They went up to look.
I know where this is going. Sounds sick.
Yes. So they went up to check the water tanks on the roof of the hotel, and lo and behold, there was her decomposing body enclosed. The lid was actually closed on one of the water tanks.
Well, and don't forget, Brian, her clothing was floating beside her. She was completely naked.
Yeah, that's the other thing. So she had to go through a locked door to get to the roof of the hotel, open the lid of this big water tank, I guess get in, and then somehow close the lid. So obviously it's a mysterious death, and it still remains unsolved. They don't know what happened. There's the whole story.
Well, I did do some research on this a little bit as well, and I wanted to go back to the erratic behavior that we were talking about in the elevator.
Okay.
So what she was doing, and excuse me, what she was doing was essentially, from body language experts on the internet, was essentially playing a kind of like a variant on the game Peekaboo. And the idea, or the theory rather, is that there was a girl or a boy or somebody, a kid, in the hallway, and she was playing with them. It doesn't quite explain why she was hitting all the buttons, other than the fact that when you look up the model of elevator that was in that building, when you hit the door open and pressed a few buttons, the door would stay open for up to 30 seconds. So maybe she was keeping the door open so she could play with this little girl or boy. Okay, so that was one thing I discovered during my research that kind of goes to the give it a rational explanation kind of side of the pile. The other thing is, she was completely naked. Her clothes were floating in the water tank, and she was naked, face down in the water tank. One thing about the water tank is that the way it's designed is as such that if you were to climb in, there'd be no way you could close it. It was a big, heavy lid. There was nothing to stand on, and the water was fairly deep. So it wasn't like this 100-pound Asian girl was going to be able to hold on with her hand, pull herself up, grab the lid and pull it down, and then go drowned. So a lot of people, what they think happened was simply that it was a shady motel, or rather a regular, like, super Motel 8 style, right, where people just go there and hate their jobs. And so what happened was essentially people are guessing that a maintenance man was on the roof, saw that the tank was open, knew it wasn't supposed to be open, and just simply closed it. Didn't look in, didn't do any of the investigation, just closed the lid. So that might be one explanation on how that lid got closed.
It still doesn't explain how she got through the locked door.
Well, actually, during research, I also found that the reporters that went there were talking with the staff, and the staff took them right through to where she could get through the locked door and not set off the alarm. It was entirely possible. And like you said, Brian, she was road tripping. So it wasn't like she was happening to be staying there that night. She had been staying there for a few days at that point. So she was exploring the city and all of that. So within a couple of days, especially if you're a seasoned traveler, you're going to be pretty quick on the uptake in terms of quirks in the hotel and ways to get in and out of things. The fact that she was on a road trip by herself led me to believe that she was kind of a adventure or thrill seeker. So it wouldn't surprise me if she wanted to go to the roof and found a way up there without setting off any alarms.
Yeah, that's true. Why would you get into a water tank? Seems kind of strange.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, her blood came back as clean. She wasn't on any drugs, any alcohol, anything like that.
Yeah, a little bit of the research I did too was, I don't know if this really means anything, but it's just further, I guess, theories and clues. But she dealt with depressions, mood swings.
Sure.
She wrote about it in her own blog too. So there's also the theory that maybe it was some kind of suicide attempt or manic episode. I don't. It's just really strange though to think that even if that was the case, she was still clean of any kind of toxins in her body, any kind of drug abuse or anything like that. So. Well,
that might have been a symptom of the problem, right? She suffered from depression, yet they found no drugs in her system.
Yeah, that's true.
And what I mean by drugs is prescription drugs.
Yeah, exactly.
Derek, what do you think about all this?
I haven't said very much because I really don't have that much information about the whole case. I actually just watched the video and just read a little bit, like an hour before I started talking to you guys. So I really don't know that much about it. To me, when I was reading everything and I was seeing the video, it didn't seem that strange to me. I mean, people were talking about it being creepy and everything. I mean, I guess I can understand it, but the elevator video didn't seem that bizarre to me. People are giving like supernatural explanations, and I'm just not really sure what to make of the whole thing. I guess I would need to research a lot more to really give you my final view of the whole situation.
Fair enough. You brought up supernatural explanations. During my research, one of the things I found was this really weird explanation. It involves a weird supernatural, like, elevator game. And the whole idea, I'm not going to repeat or remember really, rather, what order of steps you have to go up and down the elevator, but the idea was that you went up to a certain floor, down to a certain floor, and up and down in a certain order. And if you did anything out of order and you got to the roof and exited, you would have entered the other realm. And that would be like the spirit realm. Yeah, exactly. Some bullshit non-reality thing that they made up just to make people feel good. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
I don't buy any of that bullshit about supernatural reasons.
No, there could be a sinister element to it too, though, where the hotel being known for people dying there and also committing suicide. You wonder if maybe there's just a serial killer, perhaps, that works there. Could possibly even work there. Finds out she's alone, easy target.
That's a fair criticism, or a point rather.
I don't know. It's the whole thing. Derek kind of kills the mystique a little bit.
I'm sorry.
Go figure. The guy who runs the horror website kills the scary mystique of it a little bit. But,
I'm sorry.
But I don't know. I mean, any unsolved death case is obviously going to have a multitude of theories around it.
Well, that's what makes it a good story, right? And that's the whole point of why this unknown person wrote in, and the whole reason we're talking about it is because there is a little bit of weirdness to it. Especially if you're untrained in skepticism and how to think critically think about things, aka most people.
You jerk. All right, guys. Well, before we continue on with some further questions, what do you say we take a break? I need a little bit of a beer refill here.
I could use more beer.
Yeah, I'll get some more water.
I thought you were drinking protein shakes, Derek.
Only in the morning and before bedtime, Josh. Get with the picture.
I'm sorry, I don't lift.
Wait, you drink protein shakes before bed?
Sometimes, not all the time.
Doesn't that put weight on?
You're opening up a whole nother can of worms.
We'll save that for another day. Okay. Let's take a quick break. We'll be back with more of your questions on the Philosophy Jerks.
I'm just waiting for the Sunday mail.
When you control the mail, you control information.
The first thing I saw were the eyes and what I thought maybe were teeth.
And started making sharp turns to shake the animal. But the beast pursued them undeterred.
It had a wide mouth. The eyes were the size of the reflectors that are alongside the road. The body was attached to the wings. It had gray and brown hair-like, but not much hair. More fleshy, kind of like a bat.
The attack ended when the creature abruptly changed directions before their eyes.
Is it not possible, nay probable, that my whole life is just a product of my or someone else's imagination?
No, get out. Next!
No one day goes by that I don't compromise. Your love for the cold love of the world. It's killing me through my own evil pride. No one day goes by that I don't know that I'm dying. Jesus Christ, are you the Savior of the world? I wanna see, but I still believe. No one day goes by that I don't realize. I know that no one will ever know where the flowers go when they are gone.
All right, welcome back. We're all getting older, so we all had to get our tinkle breaks in there. I think, Josh, you refilled a beer.
Oh, I did. I have a second one just in case I have to get up again.
Derek, did you have a protein shake? Or do you have like a pre-workout craze drink?
Like seaweed.
Not generally. I might take or I might have a bit of caffeine of some kind, but that's pretty much the extent of that.
Like coffee
Yeah.
or like a penguin mint?
I like to drink coffee before I go lift weights.
Sure, why not? Coffee works just as well as anything else.
Nothing like
So,
shit in your
why
pants
not?
while you're lifting 400 pounds.
Hasn't happened yet, but I've seen it happen, so I know that it does happen.
Was it
Well,
like
coffee
right?
is a diuretic, right? So that would kind
Yes.
of work.
Did that happen next to you, or was it on like a YouTube video?
Yeah, it's on YouTube videos. I've
Wow.
seen, people like projectile vomit and do all these strange sorts of things when lifting.
I always hate the grunts. Those always bother me.
I'll be sure to grunt as much as I can. As much as I can.
All right. What do you say we get back to the questions?
Sounds good.
Okay, this one comes from a Halloween obsessionist. I don't know if that's a word. If it's not, I just made it up. But
Oh, boy.
I know her well. This one comes from Maria. One day, Josh, we will get her on the show.
Yeah, right. She's like a fox. You don't see him unless you almost run him over on the road.
They're spooked easily.
That they are.
Anyways, she writes, hey, you jerks. I wanted to switch out my question for a more Halloween-y question.
Oh, boy.
Her first question was kind of vague, so I guess she wanted to revise it here.
Of course.
She says, name a horrific creature, monster, or paranormal being, etc., etc. What makes it memorable and effectively creepy?
Ooh.
Ooh.
Monster movies are my favorite of the horror genre, me personally.
Why is that,
Yeah,
Brian?
mine as well. Yeah.
Oh, and Derek
Why?
too. Wow, two
Yeah,
for one.
absolutely.
Wow, really? I wouldn't have guessed that one.
Really? I mean, I don't want to get into too much detail, but I mean, my website is definitely geared toward creatures and monsters. I had a whole segment on Monster Mondays just focusing on monster movies. I love, love, love monsters. If you really like monster movies, like Josh said, I have small monsters. I have nature movies with, monstrous animal creatures. I have tons of stuff related to monsters. And I guess that should segue into perhaps what I most look for in a monster or find creepiest. And I don't know, it's difficult to actually explicate.
Here we go with the vocab.
I was just going to say explain, but just for you, I wanted to make sure I fit in explicate.
Yeah.
So,
Here we go. He's got his masters, everybody.
anyone wants to see a picture, I can gladly send it to you.
No one fucking cares.
You brought it up, Josh, not me. Okay. Well, for me, monsters, which I call them like neo-monsters, if you will. They are, to some extent, they represent humans, but they represent humans enough to be slightly resembling a human, but still just outside of the realm of hominids, I suppose you could say.
So like Swamp Thing?
A little bit. I do like Swamp Thing. If it has large teeth, like if it's really tall, Rawhead Rex is what comes to mind when I think of monsters. Not many people will know that monster, but
oh, here we go.
Just really tall, really I don't know, lots of hair spreading all over the place, slime coming out of the mouth. I really like these sorts of monsters. I think it has more to do with childhood fears and seeing these kind of creatures growing up that really got me hooked on them. But I've always had a huge fascination with creatures like this. And I mean, I like vampires, I like werewolves, but just these kind of neo monsters to me are really fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same for me. It's something about I don't know, the extra fictional quality to it. It's something that you're not going to see in everyday life, so it's something fantastical to it where I don't know if it's creepy, but a good monster is always memorable to me, even if it's not a horror genre. Like I don't know, would you consider Jaws a horror movie?
No.
Yeah, I would.
I wouldn't.
I would.
Oh, well, I'll stay in the middle so we don't have a conclusive answer. But when I was a kid, Jaws really fascinated me. The fear of, I guess it's a fear of your everyday element that you don't think much about in Jaws. It's the water, or in other monster movies, it's just, being on land, and it's something big and supernatural and scary that you can't get away from. And the whole idea of a creature that eats people, I don't know, I always found kind of funny or scary or fun to watch, I guess.
That's another thing interesting thing that you bring up, because cannibalism for me, and just the eating of people in general, has always been something that I've found interesting for some strange reason. Maybe I have underlying cannibalistic tendencies, I'm not sure. But monsters, like even going back to the Goosebumps, the show and the books, I loved the stories by far the most that focused on monsters that would be eating the kids. I don't know why. There's just something really creepy about that to me.
I'm sure there's some psychological aspect to that.
Well, it's funny you bring up eating people, because the monster that really sticks with me the most, and for a lot of the same reasons that you like your monsters, Derek, is the humanistic quality of a zombie. And specifically what I'm referring to is the emotional and intellectual challenge that will confront you when you're looking at your dead mother, let's say, and she's back as a zombie and trying to kill and eat you. The entire mindset that goes into that is just really fascinating to me, because, a day earlier you were, protecting your mother and loving your mother, and then a day later she's infected and turns, and all of a sudden she's trying to eat your face off and destroy your being. So you have to cut ties emotionally to your mother if you can, and blow her head off.
Yeah, it's a good point. I really like zombies. To me, they are slightly too resembling of, I guess, standard human form for my liking. I still really like zombie movies, but I guess
that's the thing that fascinates me, right? Is you're absolutely right. They're exactly human. And what's really weird to me is that you don't really know if it's an extension of what is possible in terms of being a human. So are we zombies in some kind of deep-seated fashion? Or is it something that's so like us that we mistake it for us all the time? So we see our dead mother there and not a zombie. That's what's fascinating to me.
A lot of zombie movies play off that too, right? Like Dawn of the Dead kind of paralleled human beings being zombies, mindless consumer zombies inside the mall, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, and I think conceptually, I definitely agree with you. I guess for me, it's more of an aesthetic than a concept. I guess I really like the idea behind zombies and the fact that you the things that you just mentioned. But I guess on top of that, there's a particular aesthetic that I find more interesting with monsters, which tend to still just barely resemble the human form in some way, but they still seem ethereal and I don't know, just creepy.
So what are your qualifications for just barely being human? Like, what do you look for that of the human qualities? What do you look for in that creature that draws you to it and reminds you of being human?
I think a lot of it is the movements. Like, if you have a monster which would still be standing on its hind legs and, has four limbs and everything like this, but is moving like a human, it has similar human characteristics in that regard, yet still doesn't quite seem human, or...
I see where you're going with that. And I often have the same concept or thought in my head, and I wonder if it's playing on the idea that we have so much dominated the planet, at least as far as we can tell, that the only real threat biologically, other than pathogens, is each other, humans. So I wonder if that's playing on that concept that is a slightly or majorly exaggerated feature of a human being that makes it real enough for you to forget that you're watching a horror movie, maybe?
It's possible. Yeah,
Sorry, I cut you off. I think that's part of the fascination with the eating of humans too, right? The monster that can eat a human. like Josh said, humans are kind of top predators on the planet. So the idea that there's something that you can't overcome with your intelligence that can just, smash into your house and eat you, I don't know, there's something a little scary and fascinating about this. And, to this day, I still look down at the toilet every time before I sit on it because of the ghoulies.
Right, they'll get you in the end, Brian.
Ghoulies. They'll get you in the end.
Okay. All right, guys. Let's take a momentary break from the creepy Halloween-style questions here.
Although that was a good question. Thank you, Maria.
Yes, thank you, Maria. That was a fun one. Now, let's get into a little bit of a philosophical question here, guys.
Oh, boy. Here we go.
Ooh.
That is how we all met, right?
I believe so, yes.
Look at this. All these years later, look where we've come. Anyways, this one comes from Anonymous, but it was sent through the website. And it says, do the laws of science explain or describe the universe? Can they do both?
That's a damn good question.
That was from Anonymous.
Okay, yes. Whoever you are, that is a great question. Thank you for asking that one.
I should have left your name with that question.
I know, right?
All right, so what do you guys think?
Do they describe or explain the universe?
It says, do the laws of science explain or describe the universe, and can they do both?
I mean, right off the top of my head, I want to say they inherently do both, right? Like, when you explain something, before you can explain it, you have to describe what you're talking about.
Yeah, I feel like they're getting at something a little bit deeper in that they're not necessarily asking, does it have the possibility to explain aspects of the universe, or does it have the ability to explain the universe as a whole in its entirety? That's how I interpret the question.
Well, that's a good interpretation, but what are your thoughts on it, Derek?
It really depends. Again, if you want to have that segment, where you define your terms, if you will, I would like that actually to be input in right now.
Define the
terms. Because I think it depends on exactly what you mean by describe, by explain. Because I think that science, the goal of science is to explain aspects of the universe and aspects of the world that we live in, or at least as we know the world, with our limited abilities to really understand the world and to see how it operates. I mean, I think that it can explain certain things about the universe. If you want to know why we have tides or something like this, of course, you can get this explained by science.
Tide goes in, tide goes out. Never a miscommunication. You can't explain that.
I don't think that science can do something like explain. It can't explain why, meaning that it can tell you.
You can explain why the tide goes in.
Tide goes in, tide goes out.
See, the water, the tide comes in and it goes out, Mr. Silverman.
Maybe
it always
it's
comes
Thor
in
on top of Mount Olympus who's making the tides go in and out.
No, but you.
Okay, let me start over. Okay, so
you were on the right track. I liked where you were going. So.
There are two different whys, I suppose. Like, why do the tides go in? Why do they go out? You can explain that scientifically. You can't explain for what reason they actually do that, or why they do that or behave that way, as opposed to a different way. Let me say that.
Well, that's almost required, right, Derek? In order to question the way things are when you perceive them, you almost inherently have to have an idea of another way in which they could be acting.
Say that one more time.
So if you're asking why do the tides move in and out, and you're not talking about a purely mathematical and scientific reason, but rather why they're doing the behavior they're doing now instead of another behavior. Mm-hmm. In order to talk in those terms, you have to have an alternative method outlined, right? Otherwise, the question doesn't make sense. So if the tides move in and out, you in order to ask the question why in those regards, you have to say, well, instead of moving in and out, why don't they move left to right? You have to almost have another explanation, like built into that question in order to ask it.
Well, I mean, why? how could you answer the question? Why wouldn't they? Why wouldn't gravity have some other kind of property which would result in an alternative effect as opposed to the effect that it has on the tides, as it is or as it stands? I guess I'm not entirely sure that I get the refutation.
Well, I kind of do. I don't want to mistake, though, my explanation or my retort here as a debunking or a skepticism of, like you say, gravity as a whole in terms of the tide. But I think it's perfectly healthy and perfectly valid and useful to imagine the way that they could be and then deconstruct why they don't work that way, right? That's almost as useful as looking at the way they actually are and working your way back from there. And in fact, I would almost argue that if you start with what something isn't, you're more pivoted to learning something extra along the way.
I suppose I see where you're going to some extent. Yeah, I'm not.
Why do we have to use the Bill O'Reilly question to?
That was all I could think of too, by the way, Brian, was, well, how does the fucking moon work? I don't know. I'm a Republican. I don't think that deeply.
You can't explain that. God did it. I think what you were trying to say was science can give you an explanation of why something works the way it does, right? It can tell you what the mass of a planet is. It can tell you how fast you can travel through space. I guess, help me out. Were you trying to say that science doesn't necessarily explain the meaning behind any of that? Was that a good way to put it?
That was part of what I was getting at. I mean, the other part is that still, science is contingent upon our understanding of the operations of, the laws of nature, and our understanding of, concepts like space and time and things of this sort. And we can't get outside of the fact that there could be some other sort of reality, if you want to call it noumena or something like this, that we will never actually be able to understand. And science can't, reach this potential. It's only limited to this. I mean, it seems like a large framework, but it's still narrow in some extent, or to some extent, I think.
Well, I would almost argue that that's the purpose, right? I mean, science is a tool or a method of understanding the world around you. And just like with a regular, like, let's take, for example, a screwdriver, a Phillips head screwdriver. In order for a Phillips head screwdriver to be useful, it has to first admit and operate as such that it's not a wrench or a hammer. Well, I've used a hammer or a screwdriver as a hammer before, but never as a wrench. So, in order for science to be useful, it has to say, or it has to start with some kind of framework on what it can't really explain. And I think that's actually a pro or a plus to science. Whereas a religion, I hate to go right to religion, but it's the obvious counterpart to science in our day and age. Even though I maintain that large chunks of religion and science are they overlap or they work together, but that's beside the point. So if you take religion tends to explain everything. It tries to be the ultimate Swiss Army tool, whereas science, in order for science to be useful, it recognizes that it has to limit itself in what it can operate in, and what it limits itself in terms of what its operation is a empirical based or a way of understanding the universe that everybody can recreate and understand the results, right? So it's not a mystical experience that only one person understands and they go off and explain it to everybody. Rather, it's a method that once it's perfected, it can be recreated by another person and understood in the same way and explain the same phenomenon.
Sure. So, I mean, I don't disagree with you on that. So based on that, couldn't you answer Anonymous's question here as saying that, yes, science does explain the universe?
Well, I totally said it right in the beginning, right? I think it does both. I think that in order to explain, you have to understand. And in order to understand, you have to explain. Brian, you should appreciate this quote. And that's the best teachers are when they teach, they're also learning, right? Every time you teach something, you learn something more about it. And science kind of takes that same kind of philosophy. We explain the universe, but only in such that we have to understand it. And in order to understand it, we have to explain it to other people so that they can recreate it and come to the same consensus.
Interesting.
So I guess, I don't know, just...
So his question was, can they explain or describe the universe, and can they do both? So are we... I haven't found myself disagreeing with you yet, Josh. So are we saying that it can explain it, but it doesn't necessarily do both?
No, I'm saying that it inherently does both. It can't do one without the other.
Oh, okay.
Mic drop. I'm done.
Yeah. My question is, because I grew up in Albuquerque, what was there any cool places, anything that you liked being there? Like, how was it? Because it's my hometown. So I want to know, how'd you like it? Well, did you have fun there?
Yeah, I'd go and visit your mother once in a while.
Oh, that was a little mean.
All right, I got nothing further to add to that one. That was a good job, guys. It took me back a little bit.
Me too.
Okay, why not save the best for last? Am I right, guys?
I think you're referring to the James M. Power questions, are you not? We really should do a theme, like a song here.
James does need his own theme song.
A theme song? I was just anticipating that you guys would do an entire Powers show, actually.
Ooh, that's a good idea. Season 3 is coming up. Maybe we'll do a James M. Powers episode.
Season finale. It's James M. Powers. All right. Well, this all started off with James sent us a tweet that said, I think I sent in a question. Not sure if it went through, though. Ugh.
James, it went through. We got it.
It came through, James. And it actually says, from superfan James M. Powers. He's taking the moniker, guys.
Oh, boy. Here we go.
Here we go. This one, unfortunately, it's not a paragraph essay, but it's still pretty good. So he says, what's up, guys? First, why are you making fun of me that the Yankees lost the wild card game when the Tigers didn't even make the playoffs in the last episode? Mind-boggling.
He's got a little snark to him.
I know. Don't make fun of his Yankees. He gets upset.
He loves to yank.
Who cares? I mean, the Tigers were out of it a long time ago. So when your team sucks, I'll speak as the resident sports fan here. When your team sucks and there's no chance they're going to be playing for the championship, all you do is just hate on the other teams. So,
of course, that makes sense.
James, it has to be killing you, by the way, that not only did the Yankees lose in the playoffs, but the New York Mets are now in the World Series. Oh, God, that's got to sting.
That's a Rockaway sting.
All right. I did ask him one time. I don't understand how people from New York pick allegiances between the Yankees and the Mets. Because in Chicago, you have the Cubs and White Sox, and that's pretty much divided by geography. People on the north side of the city are Cubs fans, and people on the south side are White Sox fans. Doesn't make sense in New York.
Is it one of these cases? I mean, I don't keep up on sports very much, but I mean, if you live in New York and maybe one of the New York teams is playing one of the St. Louis teams, do most people still root for the Chicago team that they don't particularly like?
No.
No? So they hate the opposing team so much that they will just pick a team that means absolutely nothing in terms of geography or anything like this?
From my experience living in Chicago, yeah, most of them do. Most White Sox fans hate Cubs fans, and Cubs fans hate White Sox fans. To me, that doesn't make sense. If I was native Chicagoan, seems like I'd always root for one of the Chicago teams over any other city.
Yeah, intuitively, that's what I would think, but
I guess it's kind of like the Michigan State rivalry. Me personally, I'm a Michigan fan, but if Michigan State's playing any other school, especially like an Ohio school or a school down south, I'm pulling for Michigan State. I don't know. I'm not going to pull for Ohio over Michigan State.
Fuck Ohio.
All right, there you go, James. I spent way more time on that than I was expecting. All right. So here he goes. He says, sticking with the Halloween horror theme, did you ever play any horror video games? If you did, what is your favorite? He goes on to say, I really like the Resident Evil games. The first time a zombie came up to me, I legitimately got scared. I didn't know what to expect.
Yo,
That's
James,
from
I want to
Super
go on.
Fan.
I want to go on record right now and say it's a rare day when James and I have the same kind of agreement and life experience. So, James, the first time I played Resident Evil, when the licker, or the one that crawled on the wall, went
I
by
hardly
you.
knew her.
Huh?
Liquor? I hardly knew her.
Oh, there you go. $5 will get you a lot.
Anyways.
But anyways, when the liquor went across the the outside of the window really quick, and I only caught it on the corner of my eye, and this is on the first level of the first stage of Resident Evil #1. It legitimately scared me. Like, I wanted to put the controller down and take a break. But I also got kind of creeped out by the time I nuked Derek and Civ.
You won't let it go. You guys won't let it go.
Derek, that is one of my top 5 life achievements. That's up there with bungee jumping and meeting the Pope.
One day you're going to have to explain that. But since I don't know if you want to explain it now or not, but because the topic is horror video games, guys, it's not nuking Derek.
It was pretty horrific that we nuked your civilization.
Yeah, your people were pretty pissed off, and they were going hungry because all their food supply was in ruins.
Well, that's true. They were doing quite fine before the nuke, since I had almost won a cultural victory. But
fuck your culture.
Your culture was way too pedantic for us.
Laugh it up, guys. I'm going to get revenge on you one day.
For the listeners that don't know, one day Derek and Brian and I played a collective game of Civ, and Brian and I basically played Derek for a fool, if you will, and we pretended to be his ally while we moved our troops and bombs in, and then I nuked him, and Brian brought his army in and took over his country.
All in one fell swoop.
It was beautiful.
I just want to say though that during this entire time, I never once raged, right? I want to say that I took this betrayal pretty well.
You did. You're still our friend. You're here on the podcast. So it wasn't that much of a butthurt, but you didn't talk to me for like 3 days after that game.
My favorite quote was, I'm glad I just did 5 hours of bullshit for nothing. Okay. All right.
Oh,
anyways, other horror video games.
Right.
Do you guys remember Seventh Guest?
I do.
Back in the full motion video days.
That was a great game.
This one. No.
That one creeped me out. I mean, I was young, and you had, there was also oh my god, what was that game? Phantasmagoria.
You know what? I was just going to say that because actually this summer I actually went back and I played this game with my girlfriend, and we beat the game for the first time, and I love this game. Absolutely love this game.
Did I say it right?
Phantasmagoria. It's like from '95 or something like this. So yeah. It's,
I remember reading the PC magazines at the time when that game was coming out. It was kind of a big deal.
It was so cool. It's like one of these movies where, it's basically played out like a real movie. They shot real scenes with actors and actresses and everything. It takes place in this really creepy house. There's like all of these cult elements and supernatural, demonic elements.
Wasn't there a rape scene in that video game?
Yes, and it was really hilarious too. We were laughing the whole time. It was
I do remember. I played this game when I was a kid, and I remember laughing my balls off at the rape scene because it was so stupid.
Yes, it was. I mean, that the actor who played the husband in the game was hilarious. The whole time. But
yeah, I miss those full motion video games. There was a certain, I mean, they were just kind of creepy in and of themselves. Anyways, intentionally or not, but when they made it into an actual scary game, it kind of just added to it.
Yeah, and the score was really cool on that game too. I mean, the musical score is what I mean.
There was Alone in the Dark. That one was a fun one too.
I like I like Dead Space. Some people don't consider it horror, but
No,
Dead Space is great.
Dead Space 1 was amazing. 2 and 3 can suck my dick.
I haven't played those. Maybe I should.
Only one. Just play the first one.
Left 4 Dead is the last one I'll mention.
Yeah, I was gonna bring that one up. That one's really fun to play with friends, especially the first time you play through it. It's stuff jumps out at you, and I don't know. You get your heart racing playing with someone else too.
Yeah, definitely.
James, I have to give it to you. That was a pretty good question.
And very appropriate, and more importantly, not a paragraph long.
And a question, so it was an actual question.
And better luck next year with your Yankees. Ouch.
That sucks, but James, wow. I mean, I hope you can have merchandise purchasing all that.
All right, guys. There are some other questions, but unfortunately, all things must end, so we'll save them for future episodes.
Thank you all for writing in. It was an amazing response. I don't know if it was Derek's fans or 80s Horror Net fans, rather, or Philosophy Jerks fans, but you both came together, and we hope we provided with a decent show. I think we did. Let us know what you think, and if you have any other questions, let us know those at philosophyjerks.com/QA, or find 80s Horror Net on Facebook and ask them there.
Yes, Derek, is there anything you want to add about good old 80shorror.net?
Not especially. I mean, just wanted to thank you guys for having me on again. I guess now you have about, depending on when this is released, you might have about a week before Halloween is here. So do definitely check out 80shorror.net. You can watch tons of great movies there. I actually have a Halloween list that you can go straight to if you want to view some Halloween movies as well.
Fantastic. And don't forget to check out Derek's YouTube channel too. Same thing, 80s Horror. Is it 80horror.net or just 80horror.net on YouTube?
Well, it's a little bit more complicated, but you can put the link below. You can put the link below if anything, and I'll post links as well.
We'll do that. Okay, Derek, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me again.
Have a happy Halloween. Oh, and we forgot to mention, today is a special day, Derek, because it is your birthday.
It is, yeah. Thank you for remembering.
Derek, are you 30 yet?
One day close.
Yes, I am. Today's not. I'm 31 today, so.
Oh.
So fuck it. We don't one cares anymore.
Exactly right. I'm used to that now.
No one cares again until you're 40. So whatever. It's just one day closer to death.
Yeah, precisely.
All right, Derek, thanks for joining us. Stick with us through one more break. Josh and I will break down the spooky music played. Find more beer reviews
and full episodes at philosophyjerks.com. Oh, yeah.
Quickly, Josh, get to the music that we played on the show. It's something we always do here. The first song was the classic Halloween theme from the movie Halloween. Cliche, but of course we got to play it.
Of course, I mean, it's tradition.
Yeah, if you're going to have a Halloween episode. Something about that song, it scares the shit out of me to this day. Not only for the movie, but do you remember growing up the Crime Stoppers TV commercials?
I do. Holy shit.
Yes. That song would always kick on all creepy, and then they'd always talk about someone who like mugged or killed or raped someone, and then they would show their picture, and it was this monotone police officer describing it. I'd have to change the channel because it would scare me.
Well, the fucked up thing is I would notice those faces in my everyday life, and it would freak me out because my teacher was all of a sudden a child rapist.
Oh, God. And all it was the Halloween theme playing over top of it.
It's fucked up. The second song we heard was by a personal favorite of mine, VAST, or Visual Audio Sensory Theater. The song we heard was I'm Dying, and it's a great song because it reminds you that you're going to die one day.
All of us, every single one of us.
Except for me.
Yes, you're going to be living with robot implants forever.
Fuck yeah, and banging robot hotties.
The last song was a song called Vampire by the Blakes. I'll be honest, I don't know too much about it, but on the Halloween station I heard it in the store, the song came up and I hurried up and I pulled out my Soundhound and I found it, and it's a good Halloween theme song. So Vampire by the Blakes.
Aren't you fucking hipster?
Got a smartphone like the rest of them. Can't beat them, you join them, Josh.
That's right.
All right, so that's going to do it for this episode. And this is the end of Season 2, am I right? Or Season 3?
Nope, this is the end of Season 2. The start of Season 3 is in 2 weeks.
2 weeks with episode 29. We're almost out of our 20s.
Almost, but not quite.
Not quite. You hold on to 29 as long as you can.
But you know what, Brian? You know what you can do in the meantime?
I believe you could go to philosophyjerks.com.
That you can, and there you can find our latest episode, all our past episodes, beer reviews, and you can find links to TuneIn, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, and of course SoundCloud, iTunes, and Speaker.
You meant SoundCloud, but that's okay. And we're going to be adding a new addition to it. We have a music blog coming from one Mr. Ohio Josh.
That we do, and that's going to start Season 3. The first blog entry will come out Monday after this show.
So get ready for that. Ohio Josh, musician extraordinaire. He said his goal, was to make it like the old Cream magazines where it's just a fan who knows a lot about music that just gives you his thoughts.
I'm excited. I gotta admit, I got a sneak peek at what Josh is writing, and I'm very excited for his blog post.
Me too. So stay tuned for that. Go to the website for everything else, social media, talk to us there. All right, I think that's enough. Josh, are you ready to go?
I am. This 8% is kicking my ass.
Have a happy Halloween, everyone. Have a good time. Don't stop thinking.
Bye, everybody. Wait, where can we find this at again, Derek?
You can find this at 80shorror.net.
That's the number 80.
Yes, .net.
All right, great.
Guy, I feel like a whore.